So I've finally seen the Enheimer of Barbenheimer. Years ago, kids are gonna be like, "What's he talking about?" It was a meme that saved movies, everybody. Anyway, so I'm not doing this quite as an Untitled review show episode, just sort of as a Doug little vlog here, just a very straightforward Doug reviews kind of thing. Partly because I did want to see what people were talking about with this. The film looked good. I did not do Barbenheimer back to back, as you can put together. I had an early screening of Barbie, so I also don't think I would have the manpower for that now. Maybe it's just, because work has me doing so much and everything, but like in a good way. I love this job and everything. But man, I don't know how I could sit 5 hours of movies, man, just in the theater seats. I'm sure people are taking a break and everything, but man, that's hats off to the people doing that, because I think it's really great. I'm really happy both these movies are doing very, very well, and a double feature is doing very well, and it happened organically, not because marketing campaigns were pushing in. They're supposed to be in competition. So many good things about this, but probably, in my opinion, one of the bigger great things that have come out of this is that, man, Christopher Nolan has really made a phenomenal movie. And honestly, I was even debating whether or not to do a review, because I'm thinking like, man, I'm just gonna be saying what everyone else is saying. I mean, everyone says this is his magnum opus, and I do agree, honestly. I really, really do. I was trying to think if there's anything different that I could add to it, and there really is, because this movie challenged me in a way I've not had a movie really challenge me, or at least in a similar way, since perhaps The Straight Story, the David Lynch film, and I'll get into that in a second here too. But just real quick, I want to give my initial thoughts before I bring up what I think this film did that really sort of surprised me and did, I don't want to say give me a twist necessarily, but it changed my perception of what the film was doing, and I didn't catch on to it immediately after seeing it. I had to drive home and really think about it. So, first off, some of you may have noticed from me talking about Christopher Nolan that it's hard for me to say I'm like a fanboy necessarily. He has made like some of my favorite movies, but I think he is one of those people, honestly, like a lot of, great creative people, has to get out of his own way, out of the way of his own style. I feel like sometimes the style gets in the way of good storytelling, but with that said, what he does that I feel like is not done a ton, or at least not done well a ton, is that he lets the story kind of lead the characters. And what I mean by that is, I usually prefer movies where the characters kind of lead the story. You don't know what they're gonna do, they're gonna surprise you and stuff like that. But at the same time, I've talked about this, I think, in like, at my Dark Knight movie reviews and stuff like that. You can have a story of like the boy that cried wolf. Everybody knows that story, classic story, we all remember it. But what's the character of the boy? Well, he's a little brat that just keeps shouting wolf and then he gets his comeuppance and everything. But let's really dive into the unexpected layers of that character. No, there really isn't one. We remember the story because of the story itself, what happens, not because of the characteristics of the boy, even though that is there too. The story led the character, the moral led the character. So it's one of those things where, it makes sense that this is totally an efficient way of telling a story, but in many ways, I feel like it's gotten in the way for some of his movies where he focuses too much, not only on the story, but how the story is told. Everybody's talked about how Nolan will play around with how there's always a gimmick with time in every single movie he's done, and 9 out of 10 times, it's good, it works. Dunkirk, Memento, even Batman Begins, is told out of order, and I'm not really against that. If anything, I do really like if it serves the story, and usually it does. But something I've complained a lot about with his movies in the past is that he over-explains things. He does the job of what we are supposed to do, of what movie critics are supposed to do, and talks about the layers and, the ethical dilemmas and the interesting choices that character has to make, or the structure of a story and everything, and it's like, the character shouldn't do that, we should do that, that's something for us to talk about. I had kind of a similar problem with the Barbie movie that just came out, and even though I can't say I dislike that movie, it just, for me, it didn't fully come together, because I thought the last third was very much just a lot of speeches rather than just characters being characters, and then the Ken subplot just really taking over too much. And I feel like with that movie, it didn't quite come together at the end. Even though I'm glad it's doing well, I want it to do well because of things that work in it. I want to see more of in movies, And the same thing with Oppenheimer here. What it does well is almost the reverse of Barbie, because it does do the stuff where people will talk about what is gonna come of this. Again, how can you not? Same thing with Barbie. How can you not discuss the implications of, something this massive? I mean, these are two totally different things, the atomic bomb and Barbie, but, they both have a big impact on the world in their own strange, unique way. So, of course, with this, they're gonna have those conversations, but what's interesting about it is that the emotions of the characters aren't delved into too much from a vocal standpoint, from a verbal standpoint. That's something where a lot of the visuals come in, and the points where they do show certain elements of the story or certain scenes in the movie, what's the word I'm looking for, where they show different points in time when they're presented to you, that'll play into the emotion of the story, and also the size of what's going on and how this is affecting the main character, how it's affecting Oppenheimer, as well as the people around him, and again, as well as the world. I really think that Cillian Murphy, it's so weird thinking of him from like the Scarecrow in Batman Begins, which he's fine. I mean, he's totally fine. He does a good job, but just coming so far to play this role that so easily could have been too much of a type. I so thought they were going to do this thing, which honestly I would have been okay with. I still think it would have worked okay. Where he was going to be, even though it's based on a real person, he was going to play this type, the person who's kind of like the neurotic genius, and he gets stuff wrong, but nobody can see inside his head, and he's trying to figure out how to get across to people, so he's eccentric, he's weird, but there's the few people that understand him, here they're going to help him out and stuff. All that is there, but he does not play it too much like that. He plays it like a complex, interesting human being. And what they do early on, and then just build upon, they don't just stop there, they build upon it, is that they show very clearly he's a guy that sees the world in a certain way, but he has trouble communicating it. He sees things, he feels things, he understands things, but he can't always convey it. So you see him build that skill, and he does evolve with this skill, and he's becoming better at communicating this to people. But then what's so brilliant is that you see that as that builds, so does the rest of the world in trying to challenge him with these ideas and what he wants to do with it. And he's a person who does have these, both extreme and not extreme at the same time political thoughts. They can be seen as extreme, but compared to others, they're not as extreme. So that becomes then, kind of a security risk at times. And the movie almost becomes a thriller because you're wondering, unless you're a history buff, did he give some information? Did he accidentally let something slip? He doesn't seem like a guy who would do this, but would he maybe let something else happen where this would slip through? And they're really good at showing this story when it's revealed, well, somebody was a spy. Somebody got information about what we're doing to the Russians, and slipped stuff to them. And then it starts to show all the moments when they were a little bit more relaxed on security, but not by a ton. And the reason they were more relaxed is because it could get them closer to their goal faster, more proficient, when they did break the rules a little bit. So watching this, knowing that there's going to be someone that's going to leak information is really fascinating. But at the same time, I see why they did that. I see why they made these choices. And again, Cillian Murphy, I just feel like so easily could have turned this kind of into a one-note character, at the very least a character we've seen before. But instead, he really did play him like this complicated, complex, interesting human being. And what I really found interesting about the film in terms of other Nolan films is that this is a 3-hour movie. And for the most part, I didn't really feel it until one moment, which again is going to be the big part I'm going to talk about in the last chunk of this. But for the most part, I didn't feel it. And one of the things they did, that Nolan did and the editor did, which I can't imagine editing this movie. It must have been a nightmare, and it did a phenomenal job. But there are a few moments, a few in the beginning, and only once in a while afterwards, where they did this thing I don't like in Nolan movies. They did this recently in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't like when they did it there, but for the most part they avoid here, is that when you have two characters talking, it'll cut back and forth between them a lot. Now, the reason you do this, or the reason it's supposed to work, is that when two characters are talking, you keep cutting back and forth quickly between the two of them, you're supposed to see both their reactions so you can really get what they're both feeling. But what happens sometimes is you're cutting back and forth between them so quickly, you're not even getting the emotion of one of them. That's one of the reasons a lot of actors prefer stage acting, because you don't need to cut away from everyone. Everyone's right there. You choose which person to watch. And even then, there's an art to that. When a person's screaming really loud and reacting, someone reacts just with their face, not verbally and stuff. So there's a whole, art to that. But what this film does is that only once in a while do they do that, where I feel like I'm not getting the emotion of the character across here. But majority of the time, they know how to edit it, where when somebody's saying something really, really important and it needs to cut to the other person reacting so that we can see how that person is accepting what's being said, they know when to edit it, they know when to cut it, and because there is this pacing that is so tight and so tied into both the musical score and the sound design that everybody's been talking about here, and they are right, it does really make it flow organically and in a way where you are invested in everything that's going on. And I don't know anything about a lot of this stuff, I'm kind of a Joe Schmo dummy, but I was able to follow a lot of this, and in a strange way, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about, what they're teaching here, and I love Oppenheimer's, love for this material. I mean, not just, the theory and these ideas that now he's gotten much better at getting across, enough where he knows when and how to break the rules, or so he thinks. Again, we sort of see with the security breach and stuff like that, but also how much it kind of comes back to bite him in the ass, how much he has these ideas that are so big, he can convey it to, at first he has to convey it to a person, then he has to convey it to a team, then he has to convey it to a government, and then near the end, he tries to convey it to the world, to the planet. And that is so fascinating to me. I really feel like the way it kind of evolves, and it shows him getting smarter and smarter, trying to figure out how to communicate these ideas, but then seeing it not always work and seeing a new hurdle to get over to convey it to someone else is so clever. And Cillian Murphy just plays it all so well, and in a way where you just look at him, and again, you can kind of tell what he's thinking in a lot of moments, but at the same time, you kind of know there's parts of him you haven't quite figured out yet, and you don't even know if he's figured out yet. His personal life is balanced relatively well, relatively well in this, and I really feel like this is a movie where the emotional and the technical come together pretty well, but it is not a film that focuses mainly on the emotional storytelling, except in a way that's more subtle than even I was aware of watching it, because usually they make it very clear when an emotional moment is happening and what you're supposed to feel and stuff like that. And in the last third of this movie, it kind of pulls a little bit of a trick on me that at first I didn't know if I was liking, and when it got to the end, I was like, yeah, that's good, but I'm still kind of on the fence about that last third. But then, on the drive home, I'm like, this was brilliant. This was so damn smart. And I'm trying to think real quick if there's anything else before I get to this last. I won't go into spoilers, but if there's anything else before I get into it that I really want to emphasize here. All the performances are great. It is worth seeing on IMAX. It wasn't a film I thought would be worth seeing on IMAX, but again, the way they show how his mind kind of works, and just the constant heartbeats of everybody watching this giant bomb about to go off, just the size of this place that they're working. When it got to the scene, and we all know what happens, but when they get to the scene where they're going to detonate this bomb, they're finally going to test it. Not only is my heart pounding, even though I know exactly what's going to happen, but the way they show it is just so well built up to and just so chilling in both what they show, the sound design of it, again, when they decide to show what reactions and when to show the actual explosion itself, that if you were to just show that scene on its own, it'd be well done, it'd be, competent and done, artistic and everything, but because you had everything building up to it, you just, at least I did, I got chills watching it. And it led to this scene that I thought, this is where I talk about the last third here, I thought was going to be the end of the movie. I can't be the only one that thought that. And again, without going into too much detail, it's him in front of his team talking, and it is one of the most wonderfully uncomfortable moments I've had in a movie, and it's told, again, mostly visually. And I love when Nolan can do this, when he can combine this wonderful dialogue, this wonderful writing, has a lot of great I want to say one-liners in it, like zingers, but that's not it. They really are taking a lot of these complicated, like literally earth-shattering, developments and reducing them down to these, important, really well-written sentences, just these, one-liners that do stick with you. But you also mix it in with this visual style that he has. It isn't just with the editing, it's also a visual style that just really is haunting and sticks with you. It definitely stuck with me. And I was just watching this going, man, you just know everything that's implied with this image, with the sound design, with what they do with the sound, where some of it gets fainter to where some of these people just aren't there anymore, and the after effects of that. So all of that is so brilliant. And even when the bomb goes off, the sound design, how they have it quiet, you take in the awe and wonder of it, but then you kind of hear the sound of the explosion, the jarring sound right after, and even that you can read so much into, and nobody is saying, well, let's sit down and talk about the implications of that. And no, they just let that scene happen. And there's another equally amazing, and not in my opinion, better scene like what I was talking about, where he's talking to his team, that just like shook me to my core. I'm just like, oh my God, this is just... I mean, it's mind-blowing how good this moment is, and it's so well built up to. And I feel like in other movies, I would have said it's a little too on the nose, but because they only took a few moments to kind of go this abstract with it. There's one other scene, which is also effective, I feel I could get a laugh or two, where, without revealing too much, where Cillian Murphy's in a chair and something happens to his clothes. That's all I'll say about that scene. But it is very effectively done, so even by doing that, it shows, well, this is a way we can tell this story, but we're not going to do it a ton, because we're only going to choose certain moments to really jar you, to really kind of shake you into this mindset of what these people are feeling in a visual way, so I love that. But then the film keeps going, and here's where at first I thought, I didn't think it was a problem, but it was stopping me from thinking this is like, just man, like just a perfectly told story, magnum opus, like, it's a little bit of an issue. And I do have both my cats on me. They'll give their commentary here. Sorry, Buster always rubs up against the tripod, so just ignore that. Anywho, Chaplin's here too. Hi, so. Anyway, but they, where's it getting to? You damn cats. Okay, what I was getting to is that the last third of this movie gives the impression that it's going to wrap up, and it doesn't. It goes on for, man, maybe another 40 minutes, something like that. And it's good, it's riveting, it's still interesting. It's the only part of the movie where I did start to get a little bored, but then it kind of brought me back again. Again, the acting is all wonderful, and you see the after effects of Oppenheimer, after the bomb is made. So keep that in mind watching this film, because it can make a difference. If you think after the bomb goes off, well, we better get your coat on and everything, you still got a while. You're going to be there a little bit of time. And I thought at first that was going to be an issue, because to me, even though it was done well, it was the equivalent of watching Rocky, the first Rocky. He does the whole thing. There's the big freeze frame at the end of him in the ring, and then half of Rocky 2 plays. Well, Rocky 2 is phenomenal. Some people even say it's better than, the first film, but man, you had such a good ending there. And I thought the visual with him talking to the team at the, what I thought was the end, was just, you can't top it. Why have more? Even though I know more happens in history, why show more? As I kept watching, I was realizing, okay, this is all really interesting. And then it gets to the last line of the movie, which I won't ruin for you. But I saw it, and at first I kind of thought, oh wow, so they are taking a stance on this. They're not just leaving it so black and white, pardon the pun, because there is black and white in this. But as I'm driving home, I'm thinking about, well, man, couldn't they have just condensed that last third? Could they do like in Patton, where after the war is won, you know, they sort of sum up the rest of his life just in this fast, you know, maybe 15 minutes or something like that. But then I realized what the movie was doing, that something like The Straight Story did as well, it's making you feel the aggravation. It's letting you feel everything that this guy has worked for just slowly being stripped away from him. All the stuff that he talks about with, you know, loving this country, but he has, you know, certain thoughts about it and some things he wants to change, like anyone does with any country they live in and stuff like that. All of that being challenged, just stuff that, you know, he said or did in the past, just being, you know, dragged out of nowhere and used against him. And he's pretty much, you know, the reason, like, you know, that the war came to an end and everything. And this is how he's treated. And I realize everything was kind of building up to that line. You know, they hint that they're going to reveal what that line is. I mean, they literally show it being built up in one of the earlier scenes in the movie. And I realized if you shortened that last third, you would not have felt everything that he loved and had passion for just be knocked down consistently by the people that were supposed to be close to him, that the people who asked him for help. And that raises doubt for him about humanity. And, you know, one of the things that you see in all the trailers is that he says, are you telling me this thing could blow up the world? He says that there's an almost 0% chance that'll happen. Almost zero? What do you expect with theory? I expect zero. Now that's a funny scene. But at the same time, when you see what his own country kind of does to him, or what his own friends do to him, it has him question how humanity works, what it'll do. And even though it is unlikely, everything suggests that, you know, a major disaster will not happen. I mean, he pretty much gave him this creation that helped win the war, that pretty much helped end the war, that things can still, for lack of a better way of putting it, blow up in his face. And it's an ending where you kind of see him a little pessimistic, and I feel like if you did not have all the struggles and turmoils that he went through after the creation of the bomb, this guy who clearly is very political and has very strong feelings and thoughts about what should be done with this, but after it's made, you know, they pretty much push him aside. If anything, they try to push him so far away that they're pushing him into a ditch, you know, pushing him off a cliff. You know, I feel like, man, if I was him, like, I would have these thoughts, and I would be much more pessimistic, and I would be more doubtful of humanity. And I really thought it was just sort of a commentary, like the filmmaker's commentary. Again, this is kind of the issue I had with the Barbie movie, where it's the filmmaker's commentary on the world, not the character. And even though Oppenheimer is a real person, they clearly have a narrative, they have an idea and everything. And by the end of it, what they've shown of this guy, I believe he would have this thought. And it would kind of be beaten out of him, where you feel like he goes into this, I don't want to say optimistic, but has some shred of hope. By the end, he doesn't, and you see why. You experience it with him. And that's very similar to what happened when I saw The Straight Story, where I'm going, why am I watching this boring as hell journey? I mean, this is insufferable. I don't understand it. And when it finally got to the end, I'm like, that was the point. It was supposed to be insufferable. It was supposed to be difficult. So you realized what this guy went through. It emphasized what he was feeling and why he was doing it. So that really, really surprised the hell out of me, because most movies, by the time I get to the end, I have an idea what I thought about. I was even talking to the person next to me. I was talking to before and after the movie a little bit. I said, I don't know what to think of that last third, because I feel like he had such a perfect ending with him talking to the group, and then it just kept going for another really long amount of time, even though it was done well. But when I was driving home really thinking about it, I realized that was part of the idea. It's kind of like Lawrence of Arabia. There's the big victory, and then you see sort of everything dwindle down and kind of fall apart in many respects. And you do acknowledge it could have fallen apart even more. Like I said, not everything worked against him at the end, but you saw how much he had to fight for it and how pessimistic anyone would be after that, and how fearful anyone would be knowing these people have the power to blow up the world. These people have done these things to me, and I helped them make this thing. So it really, really, it kind of blew my mind with what I thought the movie was doing and how it was structured. Because I think we have seen so many times movies told out of order, and sometimes it helps the film, sometimes it feels like it's done for no reason. The person's just doing it because they want to do it that way. But when you really see what this is all amounting to, and at least for me, let it sit for a little bit, I really do feel this is Nolan's magnum opus. I feel this is the film Nolan was born to make. And I think he honestly, I don't know. I feel like he does better with films that already have the story told that we're all familiar with, and he's going to come in, he's going to give a brand new take on the person by telling it in a different order, by giving a unique point of view, both verbally and visually. And I really think he's made something very, very special here. I don't think it's a movie that's going to attract everybody. I do think there's people that are probably going to look for more of the emotional connection with these characters, and it is there, but for a 3-hour movie that has a lot of talk of strategy and quantum physics and stuff like that, I don't think it's going to hold everyone's attention. I definitely noticed a group of girls next to me that were wearing pink. You could tell they were going to see Barbie soon after, and I mean, they got through it, but they were like, and they were kind of rocking back and forth. They were checking their phones quite a few times. They were making jokes every once in a while. But I mean, they still got through it. They seemed to like it okay. But yeah, it is a film where I feel like there's going to be people that really get sucked into the strategy and how the out-of-order storytelling actually sort of fuels the emotion that the characters are going through. But I think there's going to be people that do want a little bit more of a straightforward, can you just tell it in order? Can we tell this as a miniseries? Just give time for one character says something to let the other character really react to it and take its time. Because a lot of these scenes, even though it's 3 hours, are very quick, and it's designed to be that way. But again, the reason it worked okay for me is because it did seem to cut to the proper reactions, and when it knows to get a wide shot to get the reaction of everybody, or when to have a close-up of someone, this is the most important reaction, even though the editing is very, very quick. So I don't think it's going to be one for everybody. I feel like people can watch the trailer and hear people talk about it in reviews and get an idea if this will be the film for them. I went in hearing good things about it, but I wasn't like crazy hyped or anything. Again, I did have a fear, it's going to be sort of Nolan falling victim to his own tropes, but I really do think he's knocked it out of the park here. He made something really, really fantastic. So I would love to know what y'all think about it, especially that last third. Do you agree about the last third? Do you feel like that really emphasized what Oppenheimer would go through and why he would have the point of view he does by the end? Or do you feel like it went on too long? Because I haven't heard that argument too much. I thought I was going to hear it more after seeing the movie, but again, maybe they're coming to the same conclusion I am. So I would love to know your thoughts, if you enjoyed it or didn't like it. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time. Take care.